All right, you modern humans, in this episode, we deliver one of the most famous maiden speeches of all time, F.E. Smith's speech, I Warn the Government. This is Speaking Through the Ages, where we bring back the dead in an attempt to bring out the values, beliefs, and internal struggles of those humans that came before. We give context to and deliver historical speeches that motivated people to kill, riot, make salt, and sign papers. I'm Joseph Delisle, your novice history fan. To join us, subscribe and click the bell for notifications. The Conservative Party needed the Liberal Unionists, members of the old Liberal Party who left because they disagreed with the party's stance on the importance of keeping the empire and kingdoms united. Joseph Chamberlain, the Liberal Unionist leader, directly campaigned against the majority Conservative government he was a part of over Imperial Preference, Tariff Reform, and free trade issues. This effectively split the party and meant the Conservatives were crushed in 1906. F.E. Smith, a new conservative politician who won against the Liberal tide, was speaking against the Liberal claim that the people of the United Kingdom had demonstrated their unqualified fidelity to the policy of free trade. This is one of the most famous maiden speeches because, as a rookie member of Parliament with too much swag for his own good, F.E. Smith's sheer audacity to take on, stand up to, and even make fun of Liberal lions such as Lloyd George and Winston Churchill. Mr. Snowden, a pro-free trade tariff reform member of Parliament for the Blackburn district, delivered a speech on the House floor glorifying free trade, also known at the time as Cobdenism. Right after, F.E. Smith strutted onto the House floor to deliver his speech, I Warn the Government. In whatever section of the House honorable members may sit, or however profoundly they may differ from some of the economic views which underlie the remarks of the honorable member for Blackburn, Mr. Snowden, they will at least desire to join in tribute to the sincerity and ability displayed in the speech he just delivered. Speaking for myself, I confess that I have been struck by the admission which have been made by those honorable members who have spoken in favor of this resolution. I venture to ask honorable members on the ministerial side, at the height of their triumph, to consider for a moment what is implicitly involved in their concessions. The honorable member for Blackburn has just told the House that 60 years of free trade have absolutely failed to ameliorate the condition of the working class. That is a statement upon which the opposition have reached some degree of agreement with the honorable member. Where, however, we part company with him is not upon the great and growing importance of still further ameliorating the condition of the working class, but upon the feasibility of effectively assisting 13 million people on the verge of starvation by a revision of railway rates, by unexplained dealings with mine owners, or by loose, mischievous, and predatory proposals affecting those who happen to own land. The honorable gentleman spoke with bitterness, almost with contempt, of persons possessing large incomes. I would entreat honorable members to make quite sure that they have cleared their minds of cant upon this question. When I hear vague and general proposals put forward at the expense of large incomes without any precise explanation as to the principle upon which, or to the extent to which, those incomes are to be appropriated or tapped for the services of those who are less fortunate. I should like to make an elementary observation that there are few members in this House, whether in opposition or on benches opposite or below the gangway, whose principal business occupation is to not provide themselves with as large an income as they honestly can. If there is one profession to which that charge cannot be applied, it is perhaps the profession to which I myself belong. I therefore attach little importance to disparaging observations upon the rich, either from the honorable gentleman or from anyone else. Nor do I believe that the policy of unduly burdening the rich will be found on just consideration of the action and interaction of economic forces to be of real advantage to the poor. Labor, after all, is immobile, whereas capital is always fugitive. What other remedies has the honorable gentleman for the evils which he so clearly appreciates? He and his friends are alike, barren in suggestion. Unemployment yearly grows chronic over a larger area, while a parliament of free importers celebrates in academic resolutions the economic system which has depopulated rural England, has filled the immigrant steamers with fugitives from these happy shores, and has aggravated the evils of the most revolting slums in Christendom. The progress of tonight's debate makes one profoundly conscious of the constructive shortcomings of the Cobdenism of today. I myself am a perfectly unrepentant member of the Tariff Reform League. I do not know how many members of the League there may be in the House. It may be that a division would show that there are not more numerous than the representatives of the Liberal League. I have at least the satisfaction of reflecting that if Tariff Reform is not found to be a winning horse, I have not necessarily compromised my political future. I have in honorable and right honorable gentlemen opposite an admirable example of how to cut the painter of a similar league, with the maximum of political advancement and the minimum of fidelity to a founder. Such a model of chivalrous loyalty is of great value to a young member of Parliament. The resolution before the House consists of two parts. In the first, we are asked to recognize the merits of what is described on an obscure prescriptive principle as free trade. And in the second, we are invited to register the proposition that the country gave an unqualified verdict in its favor. The word unqualified is in itself ambiguous and may have more than one meaning. If we say that a man is an unqualified slave, we mean that his condition can be honestly described as completely servile, and not merely as semi-servile. If, on the other hand, we say that a man is an unqualified medical practitioner or an unqualified undersecretary, we mean that he is not entitled to any particular respect, because he has not passed through the period of training or preparation. It is, on the whole, probably the word that is used in the first sense in the present motion. But perhaps it is necessary to distinguish even further. When honorable gentlemen opposite are successful at the polls, it is probably used in the first sense. In the comparatively few cases in which I and my friends were successful, it is used in the second. Birmingham, under circumstances which will never be effaced from the memory of honorable gentlemen, on which side of the House they sit, displayed a rare and beautiful quality of political constancy, and voted in all its divisions for Tariff Reform. The result is sneered at. In the spirit of the laughter which we have just heard as a triumph for Tammanyism, or more profoundly analyzed by an eminent nonconformist, divine as an instance of that mysterious dispensation which occasionally permits the ungodly to triumph, honorable gentlemen opposite are, in fact, very much more successful controversialists than honorable members of this side of the House. It is far easier, if one is a master of scholarly irony and of a charming literary style, to describe protection as a stinking rotten carcass than to discuss scientifically whether certain limited proposals are likely to prove protective in their incidence. It is far easier, if one has the stomach, to suggest to simple rustics, as the president of the Board of Trade did, that if the Tories came into power, they would introduce slavery on the hills of Wales.
I did not say that.
The right honorable gentleman would, no doubt, be extremely anxious to forget it, if he could, but anticipating a temporary lapse of memory, I have in my hand the Manchester Guardian of 16 January 1906, which contains a report of his speech. The right honorable gentleman said, quote, "What would they say to introducing Chinamen at 1 sterling a day into the Welsh quarries? Slavery on the hills of Wales. Heaven forgive me for the suggestion." Unquote. I have no means of judging how heaven will deal with persons who think it decent to make such a suggestion. This distinction, drawn by the right honorable gentleman, is more worthy of the county court than of the Treasury branch. I express a doubt whether any honest politician will ever acquit the right honorable gentleman of having deliberately given the impression to those he thus addressed that if the Conservative Party were returned, the hills of Wales would be polluted by the conditions of industrial slavery. The alternative construction is that the right honorable gentleman thought it was worth his while, in addressing ignorant men.
No!
In relation to the right honorable gentleman, they are ignorant. Is that disputed? To put before ignorant men an abstract and academic statement as to Chinese labor on the hills of Wales. If he did not mean his hearers to draw the false but natural inference, why make any reference to Chinese slavery as a conceivable prospect on the hills of Wales? Since this House of Commons met, we have heard a great deal about the war. I would suggest to honorable gentlemen, as a humble admirer of their methods, that if they wish for targets in that matter, they ought to aim not at the opposition benches, but at right honorable gentlemen who sit on the front government bench. Honorable gentlemen opposite should remember that the present Secretary of War, Mr. Haldane, justly observed that the Boers waged the war, not only with the object of maintaining their independence, but also to undermine our authority in South Africa. And the present Attorney General, Sir John Lawson Walton, said that the wars could be shown to be as just as it was inevitable, and have been defensible on the grounds of freedom. The circumstances of which you complain were anterior to the war, while the only panacea which an honorable gentleman opposite can suggest is the employment of broken down artisans in planting trees and constructing dams against the encroachment of the sea. The Unionist party need not be discouraged by their reverse at the polls. We will say of the goddess who presides over the polls, as Dryden said of the fortune in general. I can enjoy her while she's kind, but when she dances in the wind and shakes her wings and will not stay, I puff the prostitute away. Was the verdict unqualified, having regard to the aggregate number of voted polls on behalf of the Liberal members? The voted polls at the last election for Liberal Labour and national candidates were 3,300,000, while those polled for tariff reform candidates and other gentlemen sitting around me were 2,500,000.
No, not true.
I gather that is suggested that my figures are wrong.
Yes.
They very probably are. I took them from the Liberal magazine. Perhaps the Minister of Education, Mr. Burrell, was responsible for them. He gave up the hecatomb line of business for the Christian Toleration and Charity Department. I venture to suggest to honorable gentlemen opposite that the figures I have quoted, so far as they are accurate, are not altogether discouraging to those who, for the first time after so many years of blind dogma, have challenged the verdict of the country on the issue of tariff reform. What would honorable gentlemen who represent Ireland say if it was suggested that they were Cobdenites? Will one of them get up and say that Cobdenism has brought prosperity or success to Ireland, or to guarantee that a representative Irish Parliament would not introduce a general tariff on foreign manufactured articles? The jury who gave this unqualified verdict is unaccountably silent. The spectacles of the Cobdenite hen cackling over a protectionist duckling of her own hatching in Ireland would add a partially compensating element of humor, even to the prospect of home rule. The Irish, and I may add the Indian case for tariff reform, were both once and for all conceded by the infant community admission of Adam Smith. Why do we force upon India and Ireland alike a system of which every honest man knows that whether it be good or bad for us, it denies them the right to develop and mature their nascent industries upon the lines in which they themselves most earnestly believe, and in which every country in the world except Great Britain believes? The answer is as short as it is discreditable. We perpetuate this tyranny in order that our Indian and Irish fellow subjects be forced to buy from our manufactured articles which they would otherwise attempt to manufacture for themselves. In other words, we perpetuate in these two cases a compulsory and unilateral trade preference, demonstrably the fruit of selfishness, at the sacrifice of a voluntary and bilateral preference based deep and strong upon mutual interest and mutual affection. I have heard the majority on the other side of the house described as the pure fruit of the Cobdenite tree. I should rather say that they were begotten by Chinese slavery out of the passive resistance, by a rogue sire out of a dam that roared. I read a short time ago that the Free Church Council claimed among its members as many as 200 of honorable gentlemen opposite. The Free Church Council gave thanks publicly for the fact that the Providence had inspired the electors with the discrimination to vote on the right side. Mr. Speaker, I do not, more than any other man, mind being cheated at cards, but I find it a little nauseating if my opponent then publicly ascribes his success to the partnership of the Most High. What the future of this Parliament has in store for right honorable gentlemen opposite, I do not know, but I hear that the government will deny to the Colonial Conference of 1907 free discussion on the subject which the House is now debating, so as to prevent the statement of the unpalatable truce. I know that I am in the insignificant representative of an insignificant numerical minority in this House, but I venture to warn the government that the people of this country will neither forget nor forgive a party which, in the heyday of its triumph, denies to the infant Parliament of the Empire one jot or one tittle of the ancient liberty of speech, which our predecessors in the House vindicated for themselves at the point of the sword. Smith became Attorney General in 1915 and Lord Chancellor at a very young age of 47. In 1921, he would play a huge role in the Irish settlement. A few months after his speech, he would start a deep friendship with Winston Churchill that lasted until his death. We hope you enjoyed this historical moment. Thank you for joining. Don't be afraid to light up that subscribe button. See you next time, where the dead teach.